When I first got the book, The Princess Diarist, and opened it up, I'll admit my eyes started to tear up looking at old photos of Carrie Fisher and the gang. Yes, I'm a Star Wars fan. Who is this book for? Carrie says in order on the dedication page, George Lucas, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, etc. Now that's telling. It's just an interesting order, isn't it? I mean, George Lucas, then Harrison Ford. Shouldn't Harrison Ford be first, in this book? Have you heard about this book? Wait, back up. Did I just say my eyes started to tear up while reading this book? No, I'll admit it. A river of tears came down my face. I'm a sensitive guy, though. When it comes to Star Wars, there's just something about Carrie Fisher that reminds me of home. She's so funny. I heard that she was called brilliant by people, and I wasn't sure, actually, until I read this book. I never knew all these years, and there's just so much going on here. Number 1, the dream role. In the 1970s, Carrie Fisher went to audition for Star Wars in one of those faux Spanish cream-colored buildings, she says, and she had a dual audition. She also auditioned for Carrie, by Stephen King. Very funny. And she had to explain to Brian De Palma and George Lucas that if she got one of the roles, she would drop out of school. And to her, this just felt disloyal. Disloyal is an interesting word, isn't it? She got a call back and got the manila folder with the script in it. Star Wars, a space fantasy. Who would have known? And the images jumped off the page. And when she was called back, she went in to do a reading with Harrison Ford, a man she'd never met, a man with a sculpted face. And she was so nervous, to say the least. But George Lucas, as you know, he wanted the chemistry between the actors, and that's what he got. There was so much chemistry, how could they not get the part? Carrie? Yeah? They called, her agent said. They want you. She laughed and dropped the phone and ran out into the front yard and into the street. It was raining. It didn't rain in L.A. It was raining in L.A., she said. And I was Princess Leia. I had never been Princess Leia before, and now I would be her forever. So here she is. She's thrust into this world, learning about things like lip gloss, which you need if you're going into battle, space battle, and those buns. She would need those buns, hair buns, and she would need something else. In her case, she says, I began filming Star Wars hoping to have an affair. Not surprising for a 19-year-old female in the 70s. And I didn't really know what someone actually needed to do in order to make a thing like that happen, she said. In a way, she knew what was coming, and you can't blame her. She's 19 years old. What is she supposed to do? She's basically a virgin. She had a couple hookups, a boyfriend, but she didn't sleep around. She just didn't sleep around again. And here was this movie star on set, a real-life movie star, Harrison Ford. She knew he was going to be huge. He had that aura, epic, kind of like a god. And he didn't say anything, the strong, silent type. That made things perfect for projecting. And so here she says, when I look back with squinting eyes, I figure Harrison was scoping out the set in those early days. Not to have an affair necessarily, but then again, not to either. We were on location after all. It was almost expected. On location, far from home. So she acknowledges it wasn't just her. Both of them were combing, she says. I would put in the word trolling. But he's intimidating, she thinks. She sees him at one of those after-shoot, end-of-the-day movie parties, and they don't look at each other. But they can feel each other. You ever had that sensation? And she's drinking with the crewmates, which is something she didn't really do at the time. She didn't drink beer. Weed was different. But at 19, she felt pressured to, fit in. And suddenly, all the good-looking guys were swarming, and they tried to take her away when out of nowhere came the hero. Where are you taking her? Nowhere, man. The lady just wants to get a little air is all. Pardon me, but the lady doesn't seem to be very aware of what she wants. I gradually came to realize who it was that I wanted to win, Carrie says. My co-star, the smuggler, the one with the scar on his chin, the dialogue in his head, and the gun in his belt. I was going to go home with Harrison. I knew it wasn't a good idea. Weird and grumpy as he might have been, he wasn't a bad human. He was much more on the good side of the bad-good human graph. He was bad and good, like most people. They would need that practice for The Empire Strikes Back. Carrie says it too. Check out those kisses in Empire, she says. Those were years in preparation. And so, as you know, Harrison was married, okay? He was about 36, and so here they are, playing out this archetype, love situation, triad, that has happened since Roman times. falling in love with that which you can't have creates a lot of torture. And so the only way she could survive was to write about it in her journals, and write about it she did. There is that hope. I mean, come on. That he's going to leave his wife. But would John Wayne leave his wife? Sullen and scornful, a real Marlboro man, the type who pours out the beer and eats the can, a tall guy with a cultivated leer, one you can count on to disapprove or disappear. I knew right away that he was a find. He knew that you had to be cruel to be kind. Given this, he was the kindest man I'd ever met. Back came my sense of worthlessness, and my long-lost pangs of regret. I was my old self again, lost and confused, reunited with that old feeling of being misunderstood and misused. And so, here she is with this guy who doesn't really see her. He doesn't see her, and she doesn't really see him. If we were to analyze this, I would say she is Tinkerbell, and he is Peter Pan, and she's replaying what it was like for her in childhood to have a father who wasn't there, who didn't see her, to have a father who was out trouncing around with Elizabeth Taylor. And so she knew the pain of what having an affair can have on a family, and yet she was doing it anyway. Can you really blame them? Part of us says. Can you really blame them? I mean, would you hook up with Princess Leia or Harrison Ford? What were they supposed to do? But of course, that's not taking responsibility. Even Carrie says that, the young Carrie in her journal. I have not totally accepted that I am no longer a child. Once I do that, I will have to accept responsibility for everything I do. I have never done anything quite like this. I sit patiently awaiting the consequences. She's tortured. And with this, she could become vindictive, If he never married her, she could paint him as a predator in the journals, but doesn't. Or in the book. There's a love there. She writes, George says that if you look at the person someone chooses to have a relationship with, you'll see what they think of themselves. So Harrison is what I think of myself. It's hardly a relationship, but nevertheless, it's a choice. I examined all the options and chose the most likely to leave. No emotional investments. Never love for me, only obsession. And then she said something which I'm not hearing anybody talking about. I'm sorry, it's not Mark. It could have been. It should have been. It might have meant something. Maybe not much, but certainly more. We will always remember you, Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, with love. Thank you so much for joining me today, and feel free to share this video with any of your friends. This book is so interesting. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and thumbs up button if you haven't already. Meanwhile, have a fantastic week. I'll see you next Friday. It was great, as always.